Building the company is one thing, knowing when to walk away is another. Ryan Clark did it. He co-founded PeopleShare, scaled it to 40 locations across 8 different states, had about 250 people, and then he made the call. And so we'll get into how he built it, how he knew it was time, and what actually happens after the exit. I'm Bryon Morrison. Let's get to the leaders list.
Everything is happening through these screens.
How are we getting the most out of that person?
I want to see this thing grow long term.
Amazing story. You have such a unique perspective on that.
Schedule a 2-week vacation.
I applaud those models.
Undervalue.
Secure your digital footprint as well.
Why were they even put in place in the first place?
Only the most adaptable survive. Let's get to the leaders list. Ryan Clark, thank you so much for being on the leaders list.
Yeah, really happy to be here. Let's get it on.
Yeah, let's do it. All right. So listen, today we're going to talk about something that, most of the founders and the folks that, work in these great small to medium-sized businesses that are growing and scaling. There's this view of what's it like afterward. What if I sell my company and what's that look like? And you have a great story. I know you started PeopleShare back in, I think it was 2005. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what that was like when, tell us about your journey and what got you to where you're at today.
Yeah, I think it's a traditional starting point where, you've got somebody that's working for a, major player. You learn how to make the pizza from, working at a Domino's or a pizza slot. And then you say, hey, I can make a better slice or better pizza on my own. And that's what I did. I worked for Randstad, which is a $25 billion a year firm. I mean, huge. And we all know what that size organization sometimes can be positive and negative. And for me, it wasn't a whole lot of fun. I was a great corporate employee until I wasn't. And I just thought I could do it better on my own and just hang a shingle.
Yeah. How far along in that process was it for you when you started to realize like, hey, I can do this better or differently?
Well, I would say probably 50-50, 50% from the time I was, I don't know, maybe ninth or 10th grade. I kind of wanted to be on my own, but never had the guts to do it. And then it was probably about a year in to see, and I know this sounds really negative, Bryon, but I'm just going to be direct with you. I saw everything about how not to run a company, how not to treat candidates as they came in, how not to be flexible with customers. And I just thought to myself, boy, it's not a whole lot of startup capital. This isn't like starting up a Mercedes dealership where you got to go out and buy a fleet of cars. I mean, you could do this with, a phone, a computer, and maybe a couple $100,000 to fund your payroll. So not billions or millions of dollars by any stretch.
Yeah. Well, and there's a difference, right? When you're looking at a company as large as Randstad, you have to put some controls around types of clients you work with and how you work with them. And so that's what creates opportunity because they can't be all things to all people. And so you obviously found that what was the niche that you were looking at that you knew that you could go win in?
So everybody says when I tell them I'm in staffing, they always think to themselves, oh, you probably do technical because that's the great opportunity and IT and now AI. But I never liked IT. I never liked the technical space. I wanted to do what I was passionate about, which was helping the people that are most in need, which is the clerical administrative people, recent high school graduates. Some are college graduates, but most of them, as the HR people put it, it's the non-exempt space. It's hourly workers. These are the people that don't have the ability to write their own resume and just go out and use a retained search firm. They need a local provider like PeopleShare was.
Yeah. And so you did that, built that company up. Just tell us a little bit about what the process looked like for PeopleShare.
Yeah, when we started the company, I founded it with a partner, and we just concentrated on one sector. There's only two ways you can grow in staffing. You can either A, grow and do different lines like nursing, technical, and various different positions, or option B is the way that we decided to grow, just keep on opening more and more locations. So the 7-Eleven model, where you're just selling entry-level products, but you got a boatload of locations out there. So by the time that I sold the company in 2023, we had 41 locations.
Wow. Okay, so as you went through that, tell everybody a little bit about your own personal journey as a leader. I know it's one thing, like you said, when you take your laptop out and you go, hey, I guess I'm in business. And you have great personal relationships and you know how to build personal relationships. So that feels pretty comfortable. What was the hardest stage for you in growth as a leader? Because going from a dude with a laptop to 41 locations with, what was your total staff count at that point?
255.
Okay, so you hit that 250 mark, which, I always tell everybody that you're basically running an entirely different business when you hit certain growth stages with staff. 250 is one of those. So
yeah.
What did you find the hardest when it went from 1 to 2, or 2 to 5, or when it was 125, 150? Like, what was the most challenging for you as a leader?
Yeah. Well, there's a great quote that it's always stuck with me, and about leadership is it's just like poker. It takes about 5 minutes to learn. It takes a lifetime to master.
Yeah.
You get the basic principles of management and leadership. You could read that in a book and have them, upstairs. But the practical application, man, I don't know how to answer that question, Bryon, because I was constant. I know this sounds a little cliche, but I'm a lifetime learner. Every single day, I was learning something. And I remember it was just maybe 3 years ago. I was talking to one of my SVPs, and I'm supposed to be coaching him. And he pulls me aside. He says, "Hey, Ryan, you mind if I give you some coaching?" I said, "Chris, by all means, let it fly." And he told me, hey, and this is just 3 years ago. And he says, "Hey, you going over and coaching, Sally or Bob or Mary, these rank and file people, like you have a different responsibility that you as the general should be nothing but pinning medals on people and patting them on the back. I'm the one that should be, you should be on me and then I should be on them. So don't get them, don't have that confusing role." Like that's something I should have known or implemented years ago, but I'm still learning it.
Man, that's what a credit to that individual to have the guts to say, like, let me help manage up.
Yeah. He was a West Point guy. So I think the military really understands, chain of command and management and leadership, and is very delineated in the military. So maybe that's where he got that. That's what I'm thinking.
Sure. Well, and it does focus on roles and responsibilities, right? And once you get to a certain size, you move from working in the business and being the top practitioner to running the business and bringing in people at a top level that you can then enable. And so that's a very different mindset. What was the turning point for you when you started thinking about, should I sell this company or should I keep scaling? Because 41 offices, I mean, you've done a really good job of building a great company. When did you start thinking differently about M&A?
So, we had this incredible growth percentage rate, right? So if you have a lemonade stand and you do $100 a week in revenue, right? And then the next week you do 200, that's 100% increase. So we had a few years in the beginning where we were growing 350%. I know that sounds really impressive, but our revenue numbers weren't that high. So then, when we got north of probably 75, 80 million, it's tough to grow at a 220% annual compounded growth rate, right? So how are we going to keep that up? And I think the time was right where we said, hey, we know we've got enough of a reputation and enough of a process and enough on the technology that now we can overlay that with Bob's temp agency, and now we could do acquisition. So, for a long time, we didn't have our ducks in a row, and it took several years to do that. So I think it was probably two factors. One is we couldn't keep up that compounded annual growth rate. And two, we finally had our systems in place where we could then acquire a company, just implement our systems and go.
Yeah.
So that's when we, signed up with a banker and said, hey, what's our company worth? And did that whole road show, which was, wow, just when you think you know everything, the universe turns around and shows you how ignorant, and I'll tell you, I was ignorant to that whole sale process.
Well, okay, so before we jump into that, because I do want to hear about what that process was like for you, when you started deciding, hey, this might make sense for us to go take our technology, take our people, do an overlay, be able to merge with somebody else. What did that process look like for you? Did the bankers drive that process? Did you bring in an M&A specialist? Did your team have experience with it? Like, how did you start to prepare for that, having not been through it before?
Yeah, the first acquisition we did completely on our own. And
you started by doing your own acquisitions.
And you ever go to somebody's house that redid their own bathroom for the very first time? Yeah, you can kind of tell.
You're like, why is there a plug in the ceiling? I don't understand.
Right. It looked like a Home Depot special. And we screwed up a lot of things. Mergers, acquisitions are never easy, and merging the cultures and all of that. But we didn't even do it right from an asset versus a stock sale, and screwed some things up, tax wise, and we learned some valuable lessons. But probably the most valuable lesson was we shouldn't be doing this on our own.
Nice. Okay. And so, how many acquisitions did you guys do?
We just did one acquisition on our own, and then when we were acquired by a private equity company, we were the platform company. They said, "Hey, we're going to do that's going to be now your main function, and now your main way of growth is acquisition." So I think we did about 5 acquisitions after we were acquired by the PE firm.
Fantastic. Okay. So now let's go back to that moment where it was the road show. You've got a broker. They're taking you through that process. Did you use broker or banker? Was it investment?
A banker. Yeah.
Okay. So you had the bank take you through that process and you had not been through it in terms of, selling your own company. It was the first one you'd sold. What was that like for you? Just talk a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, it was really eye-opening, and I'll tell you, if there was one word that I would have to use, it was exhausting. It was so tiring, like mentally. Like I played hockey my whole life growing up, and I guess that's probably the one thing that I can give myself credit for is I'm pretty tough. But man, that process really beat me up. So it was exhausting. And then we had another kind of a monkey wrench that we used an investment banker that had been in the industry for many, many, many years. So the joke about our original investment banker, and he was the head of the firm, managing partner, the joke about him was, hey, he's a really smart guy. The good news, he's a smart guy. He graduated from Wharton. The bad news is he graduated in 1968. So this investment banker, terrific guy, but was past his prime by 20, 30 years. And
Sure. Things had changed a little bit.
so, yeah, we ended up selecting him, not knowing, the gap in technology. And it probably wasn't until the 5th or 6th inning that, I had to pull him aside and say, hey, we're going in a different direction. You're still going to get paid, a reduced fee, but you're still going to get paid. But we had to switch investment bankers and went with the recommendation that I had previously rebuffed to say, hey, this guy Dan seems like a nice guy, but he's not in a major market. He's not in LA. He's not in New York. He's out in Cleveland, and he doesn't know the staffing industry. I'm not even going to meet with him. That's who we ended up going with, and he gave us a phenomenal result. So if there's any cautionary tale, going with the industry specific guy is not always the right answer. It's about the person's skills and personal attributes.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense because you can be wooed by. We talk to companies all the time, and they'll say, well, do you have deep expertise in this specific area? And it depends on what you're trying to do. If you want somebody to be a practitioner and work for you, maybe that is relevant. But if it's about leadership or doing something that your business doesn't usually do, it's about understanding that space. So I could totally understand that the investment banker that knows how to get something built, prepped, and sold and has the right network to be able to make that happen versus somebody who could potentially go, talk shop in staffing is pretty different.
No question. And it's something that I should have known from hiring all these years. You're looking for somebody to sell a widget and then immediately just go to widget making experience and who's come from that industry. And it's actually just the opposite.
Yeah.
You probably want someone from outside of the industry, but has got all those attributes of drive and ambition and ethics and all of that. So, I would preach that to all my hiring managers. But then when I did it myself, physician, heal thyself, right?
Yeah. It's easy to fall into that trap. So you guys went the PE route. I'm sure that you examined strategics and you examined, outright sale, but what was it about PE that intrigued you?
You know what? This is 2.0 of what we were just talking about just a second ago. We said we would not go private equity. We made that declaration. We've heard all the stories and the pejorative, stereotypes, and PE is in it for PE. So we said no. Our vision was always to sell back to Randstad. That would be great. Company that we left, sell back to them and full cycle, or we just go with one of those big ones, Manpower. All of them are north of 20 billion in revenue, but no way we were going to go with private equity. And it was our investment banker that said no. Keep an open mind. They're probably going to end up paying you more. The multiples are better because at the time the rates were extremely low. And a private equity company is really just ostensibly a bank, and they're borrowing at really low rates, so they could pay higher multiples. And the reputation of PE firms is not pervasive of everyone. If you get the right partner, they can really help you grow and do that, that second bite at the apple. So when we met with the company that we eventually went with, which was Trivest, boy, oh boy, these guys were just phenomenal. Made a great choice with them.
And what made them so great, Ryan?
Well, I still have it in my email from many years ago. We did the old Ben Franklin chart, pros and cons.
Sure.
And we went, we had 2 or 3 different private equity companies that we're looking at. So obviously price was one, who would close, who needed the most indemnification, cultural fit, all of these things. And, you think you would know which one, as you've been dating, 3 different private equity firms for, weeks and months, and you really get to know them decently well, you would think it would be a clear choice. But when we did this pros and cons chart, it found out the Trivest was the winner. And we looked, my partner and I looked at each other and said, can you believe it? I think we're going to go with the lowest of the 3 offers. Like, you would think that would immediately be number 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 would be the price. But we went with, of the 3 offers, we went with the lowest one.
Because of potential future opportunity. That second bite of the apple.
Yeah, it was, they sold us the future of the acquisitions and how much they were going to pour into us. But it was really more so a cultural fit. I think one of the criteria was, which one of the managing partners would we want to have a beer with?
Yeah, there's a great statement that is specifically for the agency world. They always said there's 3 things that you should think about for finding the best agency search firm. It's, do they have the talent that you want? Will they make it available to you on the terms that you want? And would you want to have a beer with them at the end of the day? And so if you can just figure that out, life is a lot easier than trying to, break it into a
first dose and, maybe have the beer be the number 1 criteria.
Right.
I don't know. I think a lot of world problems would be solved if we could, but a couple of the other private equity firms that we're talking to, we absolutely couldn't see that happen. They're very much blue blood, Ivy League, just right down the middle, no gray area, and that probably wouldn't have worked with us.
Well, that's great that you understood your own culture well enough to be able to see that in somebody else. So when you went through that process, so I always find that post-deal integration is where a lot of value gets lost, and so that's because most people or a lot of companies, as they go through that process, will be thinking about, okay, I'll deal with post-deal integration, post-deal. I'll do it after we're finished. So the reality is a lot of that gets done up front, and that gets done before the deal is ever done. So did you go through that process? You obviously did the cultural connection, but did you negotiate or structure anything up front that made sure that you were going to have a successful outcome after the actual deal takes place?
I really tried to get that in there to say, what kind of guarantees, and, the managing partner, he kind of came back to me and he knew that I was holding up the deal because of that. And, there was some little bit of friction there. And I think the seminal moment was when he said, hey, we're going to have a contract, and you can have this contract be 8,000 pages, right? But there has to still be a level of trust going forward. And that's what I'm asking you to do is, I don't know that we can put that in the document. What guarantees, what acquisitions, there has to be a level of trust. And that was that seminal moment when I said, you know what? You're right. We got to get this done. And I'll tell you, every promise that they made to us, they really fulfilled.
Man, that's fantastic. I'm still curious how you got culturally aligned to the point that you could feel comfortable and say, I mean, obviously it is about trust, but there's a whole lot of people who have had the opposite experience where they'll be told something about trust and they end up moving forward with it and it doesn't go well for them. So, how did you culturally get to a point where when they said that to you, you said, yeah, I believe you and I believe I can trust you?
Yeah, I would say that when you looked at Trivest history, selecting a vendor or selecting an employee or selecting, really any type of person that's going to do business with your firm, right? That's the most important choice, and everybody overcomplicates it. I mean, you can really just look at the past history. They were the oldest private equity firm in Southeast United States. Been around since 1978. And they implored us to call their references. They said, hey, this is like a marriage.
Yeah.
If anybody tells you we were the perfect partner, then don't listen to them. But ask our former partners, our current partners, and the former portfolio companies how we dealt with adversity, how we were a good partner in that marriage. And we made those calls.
I'll bet. Well, the cool part about that is that they were kind of teaching you how to go through that process also, by telling you, like, go ahead and research us, ask the following questions. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a group that obviously, like you said, you can start to get really comfortable with them. And so when you guys went through that process, you knew that it was all about scaling and scaling at a faster pace than you had scaled previously, right?
Correct.
Okay. And so you said, how many acquisitions did you guys do under the new organization? Was it?
I think we
6?
did. Yeah, I think we did 5 acquisitions after we were acquired. And we got better and better and better at them.
Yeah. And how much of that was your group versus the PE group in terms of getting really good at acquisition and post-merger integration?
Well, I would say that post-merger integration was 100% us. So
Okay.
they were a very hands-off private equity firm. They certainly supplied the capital and due diligence and all that upfront work. But it was literally, here are the keys, to the new company. You're running it. So the integration and personnel and integration of contracts, that was, I would say, 98% on us.
Man. So what did your leadership team look like when you rolled into that? Were there any gaps? Was there anything that you were like, hey, we're gonna actually, like, did you use acquisition to fill some gaps? What was the mindset?
Well, without a doubt, our finance team was the weak leg of that. So when you talk about an acquisition and the holes, you can really find out where you need to upgrade your talent. And from a sales perspective, I look at every company as a 3-legged stool. You got sales, you got ops, and you got finance. Everybody kind of fits into one of those buckets. So from a sales perspective, we were great. We helped them integrate our sales model, and we had real sales advantages. And how we were making our product, our recruiting, how we were generating our candidates, that was really strong. And we brought a lot of that in there. But when it came to finance and back office and merging systems, boy, we really did ourselves some disservices there and made things very rocky. But like everything in life, you get better and better as you do it.
Yeah. Did you put together an M&A team, or did one group just focus on, look, this is the business we have that keeps operating, we know how to do that, and then here's our M&A team that is looking forward and thinking about how to integrate the next group?
We did. We had a specific integration team, maybe 5 or 6 individuals.
Yep.
Somebody from finance, somebody from ops, that would come in and hopefully make everybody feel good. But I'll tell you, one thing that we really learned was, rip the Band-Aid off. Just be really direct. The first time, hey, nothing's going to change. Everything's, peachy. And, and if you look at some of these companies and they didn't scale the same way we did, you're going to change everything. So by the time the last acquisition came in, we said, hey, what's going to change? Everything, right? But the people don't have to change. If you want to ride on this, you've been on a bus that's probably been cruising about 30, 40 miles an hour. If you're ready, we're going to be asking you to go 80 to 100 miles an hour in this. So we want you here if you want to be here, but everything's going to change.
Yeah, setting that clear expectation, that makes a ton of sense, because the whole point of the reason they're going through that process is because they want to do something different than what they were doing. There's a better way, and so you can help them understand that.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's great. Okay, so let's just talk about if I'm an executive and I want to build my company. You've been through a lot of different growth stages there. So if I'm just in that mode where I've got, like say I've got 75 people, I'm building up, I'm scaling, I'm looking pretty good, but I know that in 2, 3, 5 years, I'm going to do an exit and I want to prepare myself for it, or even any kind of M&A activity. What would you as the CEO recommend that they put on their leaders list right now? They start concentrating on to be ready for when opportunity knocks.
Get an advisory board.
Nice. A client advisory board, or literally just a group of people that you can count on to just ask for information? What's that look like?
You got it. When you're a CEO and you're running your company, you're so insulated. Mm-hmm. You're head down, building your own company, doing everything, and a lot of times you just don't get that outside perspective. So who can you ask? It's tough to ask a subordinate, and they might not be privy to know this. Get an advisory board, that somebody that's gone through the M&A process and would take an outside look at your company and say, hey, this is, these are your holes. These are your personnel holes. This is your margin gap that you're missing, whatever it is. But boy, I don't know anybody that's ever put together just their own advisory board, either a board of directors or more informal, just an advisory board, that they didn't say that they got a ton of value from it. An advisory board should be able to tell you how to scale, how to get ready for sale, what to expect. They should be bringing customers to you and using their network. But most of all, when we put together our advisory board, they held us accountable. Nobody held us accountable. We owned 100% of the company. We did whatever we wanted to, and that was nice. That was flexible, right? But unless you got somebody that's saying, hey, you got to produce this, this, and this, sometimes you get a little complacent. So we had monthly strategy meetings. We talked about, how to move the needle, the OKRs, our accountability factors, objective and key results, the OKRs. We were accountable for those OKRs every month. We never were before a board.
Pretty funny, because I talk a lot about business operating systems and getting into a consistent rhythm, but you're right. If you don't feel like you have to hold each other accountable and that's not clear, it just ends up being this exercise in futility that drives everybody nuts. I love the idea of advisory board being the thing that forces you to stay aligned and keep working as a unit, as a leadership unit.
The other thing that I would recommend, though, is be very clear with what your individual goals are. So in our case, we're incredibly clear that when we wanted to sell, we told everybody the goal is to grow, 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 and get to exactly this level. And you know what the reward is at the end? We will sell. We will sell to a bigger private equity company or a strategic. So, hey, my company's getting sold. Some husband comes home and tells their wife that. And the wife says, oh, no, what does that mean? We took that and inverted it. We told this husband 5 years ago, hey, tell your wife, tell your family, tell everybody, your goal is to help us get to this level. And in 5 years, we're going to sell. And you know what, Sally, this is going to be great for you. This is going to take us to that next level. This will create more opportunities. So instead of running away from a problem, we ran toward it. So
Really smart.
I would just say, if you're a CEO that wants to transact, think about really where you want to end up and be honest and very transparent with your team. Hey, Sally, we're going to help grow this to X number of million or X, whatever your metric is. And I want to retire. I want to walk off into the sunset or whatever you want to do. So if that's the case, you need to make sure that Sally or whoever that person is really stepping up into that role, because they'll ferret that out during management meetings. And, my partner and I said, hey, when this question comes up, we need to rehearse. We automatically need to look at that guy or that gal over there and say, hey, that's your department. But if we were jumping in and giving all the answers, they're going to see us as absolutely necessary to the business. And that's not what we wanted to do. We want to say, these guys are an incredibly strong management team. In fact, don't believe us, hear it from them.
That's really advanced for you though, Ryan. I mean, a lot of people, what do you say to the people who say, yeah, I'm going to go tell my staff, this is what we're going to do. But then that puts a ton of expectations. And what if you're not ready for that? Or what if you're not fully aligned? You said something that was really interesting there, where you said, we're going to say this and we're going to rehearse it. So the fact that you are already thinking ahead about no, we mean this and we're committed to it. That's a huge, you have to at least be at that stage where that if you're going to claim that and you're going to tell people that, you got to be ready for it.
No doubt. And man, I'll tell you, this sounds so archaic, what I'll say next, which was a key for us. But we wrote everything down. These are the notebooks that we were using from 2005 to 2025. For 20 years, we were using the old school notebooks. And I remember telling somebody that a book that changed my life was Andre Agassi's book.
Uh-huh.
I remember, and one of the things that he did, he went from being highly ranked tennis player to being ranked 127th in the world. He wasn't even in the top 100. He dropped so far down. It was injuries. He had a drug problem. He went through a divorce from Brooke Shields. He had a lot of problems, and he dropped out of the top 100. And then he came back, and he beat out Michael Jordan and Wayne Gretzky for Sportsman of the Year, and became the #1 tennis player. He attributes it to one singular thing. Every single morning before he worked out, he wrote down his goals. I will be, to be this specific, I will beat Pete Sampras at Wimbledon on May 17th, 6-3, 6-5, 6-3. That specific. So we started doing it. We wrote down our revenue numbers, our gross margin, our net margin, what we would sell for, what we would acquire other companies for. When you write it down, it crystallizes it.
It's great. Yeah, that's fantastic. So as you were going through that process, that also aligned everybody with a consistent vision, right? So if you're writing down all your goals and your numbers, is that how you decided on OKRs? I know this is a really tactical question, but I'm always interested in business operating systems and what people choose to use. What was it about OKRs that made that, the right operating system for you guys?
Yeah. Well, to answer the first part of your question there, yes, everybody in the organization knew the 3 goals that we were getting to: revenue, gross profit, net profit. That's how transparent we were. Everybody saw that vision. Yep. And the OKRs, I can't say that we were doing them technically. I think it was Intel was, who came up with the whole system to begin with. But each one of our managers, our criteria for the OKRs would be, hey, it could be really simple. It could take you 5 minutes to do your OKR this quarter, but it has to be something absolutely meaningful that moves the ball.
Interesting. Okay. Did you bring somebody in to help you through that process, or was that a homegrown, we're gonna pay attention to it ourselves and do our own homework?
Our advisory board brought this to us.
It's great.
I mean, even that single thing, we always look for a cost benefit for something. All right, I paid $300 for my TV, but I've had it for 27 years. It paid off, right? We're always looking for, did we get the most out of it? And I don't know what we were paying our advisory board members, $15,000 a year, something like that. Nothing crazy for 3 board members. It might have been under $50,000 but that one piece of advice of using the OKRs. This is somebody that was an executive at CHOP, Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. He said, there's one thing that made our organization go, and clarity and just simplicity, is using these OKRs. That changed things for us. So we got our, $50,000 worth of, advisory fees per year in that one piece of advice.
Yeah. Okay, last question for you. How did you balance the vision? You knew what you wanted to do. How did you balance that with all of the new ideas and things? Because I mean, as an entrepreneur, that's always the challenge, right? We've got too many ideas, too many great things coming at us, and just being able to manage and stay focused. How did you do that? How did you do that with clarity like you're talking about? Was it just the fact that you wrote it down, you were super consistent?
Yeah, not to oversimplify things, but I'll simplify it into one word: discipline.
Yeah.
You got to have discipline. And yes, writing it down. That's what is that more than discipline? Man, every single day, doing your push-ups, your sit-ups. What is it? It's exercise. It's chest. No, it's discipline, right? You just got to be consistent with that and commit to it. But if you wrote it down, right, and then you've got all these ideas flying in at you, and which one are you're juggling this, you're trying to catch this, you're trying to avoid that one, which one? Well, you've already got a clear map that you wrote out in January, so you know the direction that you're going to go. And hey, maybe an acquisition that's happening in Arizona is not part of the game plan, right? We didn't want to go that far west to manage it. It wasn't on the blueprint. It's kind of an easy one to say no to.
Yeah.
It's not easy. It's not easy. I shouldn't say that, but you should know the answer from your blueprint.
Yeah, the discipline is the right answer, but the writing it down, having an advisory board, and telling everybody that plan creates an environment of accountability. And so that's the other side of that. There's a whole lot of people who are individually disciplined, but when you tell the world and you bring people to hold you accountable to it, that's the other side of success that I think you've really brought up some great points about. How do you surround yourself with people who are going to hold you accountable to it?
Yeah.
Man, Ryan, this has been so helpful. I hope that all of our listeners are going to be able to apply some of these things. I am always curious, and I always ask if there's anything that you would recommend for these folks. Stop listening right now, go do the next thing. What would you recommend that they go do? I would imagine that sounds like write the goals out, but I just want to say, is there anything else that you would say as an immediate next step to go do?
Well, I'll say this. This is again, the shoemakers, the shoeless shoemaker, because I couldn't quite solve for this problem myself. But you think you know the answers, but managing the different generations. I felt like at the very end, like I wasn't in touch with that newest generation, and I need to find some people. Because I remember saying to a woman, she was just out of college, and I said, "Hey, there's one book that really helped me." And I said, "You're a fan of Andre Agassi?" And she says, "Yeah, I don't really follow soccer too closely." I said, "Oh man, I'm using anecdotes. I'm using stuff that, he was an athlete in the 80s, so I couldn't really blame her too much. But, I thought to myself, boy, I've got to get a little bit more relevant. And I'll tell you, I think that understanding this new generation and creating that culture, man, I know my strengths, but I know my weaknesses better. And I'll tell you, it was just like, hey, you need to do better? Great. Get into the office at 5 a.m. and work till midnight. Like I'm stuck in the 1950s. Like that does not transcend well to the new generation. So just understanding that generation and that culture, and if and really listen to your people. So we did get a little better about that and really defined our goals and our credos, and we didn't come up with them. We made the team come up with all their goals and all their incentive plans. So we got a little smarter about that, but we're a C+ at that by the end.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, what I think is so smart though is you consistently pushing things back to the team as opposed to you defining everything for them. That makes them part of the process, makes them care about it. So that was very smart too. You guys, did a lot of right things, which is why it worked out well for you, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
That's awesome. All right. Well, Ryan, listen, this has been fantastic. Thank you for giving us your perspective on the leaders list and for sharing your story.
I'm disappointed. I was ready to go for another couple hours here, Bryon.
We'll keep going. We'll have a 2-hour outtake. That'll be great.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Ryan.
Take care.